Welcome to Blooming Wildwood Homestead. On today's episode of Coffee Talk, we are discussing pantry restock preparation. Grab your coffee, tea, water, whatever it is that you are drinking this morning, and let's dive into this topic. During the month of January, I have been participating in the Pantry Challenge. This has been really good for me because it has helped me to focus on using down my canned goods and items that I have in my pantry. Overall, I have definitely spent much less at the grocery store. I haven't been making frequent trips, and it's helped me to buy less junk and peripheral items and really eat what I have stored and set aside. As we've been going through this process, I've talked a little bit about meal planning and preparation, and many of you have resonated with that same message and have shared some of your tips and ideas and just really how necessary it is to do meal planning when it comes to using items from your pantry. And that got me to thinking, what kind of preparation are we putting into restocking the pantry? As I'm using through items, I need to be planning now and preparing now so that I can restock items in my pantry. We know that your pantry consists of many different things. You have your canned goods, which I have been referring to already. You have your staple dry goods like flour, sugar, salt, things that you're using for baking, your rice, and then also items that are in your freezer. Today, I really want to talk about how we're going to prepare to do a canning restock. This is the time of year when we've been focusing on preparing for the upcoming gardening season, and we've talked a lot about preparing and planning for planting your garden. It's about time to get some of our seeds started, and as a matter of fact, I already started planting some of the hot pepper seeds and trying to get our hot peppers going for the year. If you live in an area with a shorter growing season, it is essential to hop on things and get started as soon as the weather and the daylight hours are going to be conducive for getting things planted. As we're planning for our garden, it's important to think about the purpose and the use of the garden. This pantry challenge has helped me to look at this idea in a bit of a different way. When I'm planning for the garden and what I need for the upcoming year, I'm thinking about my goals for that produce. What am I going to be canning? What do I want to preserve in a different way? What am I going to be setting aside to make it through the winter? Some of the items that I canned last year, I may have excess of after I get through this pantry challenge in the season of using from the canned goods, and there will be other items that I will have definitely fallen short in. As you're planning your garden, you want to think about what it is that you need to grow so that you will have enough produce to preserve for the upcoming winter and early spring. Now, ideally, you would have kind of a sense of what you would need to make it through a whole year. But I will be honest, I haven't done the best record keeping when it comes to keeping track of how much I have put up and how much I have used during the course of the year. One of the things I would like to do a little bit better is kind of keep track of how much I'm actually canning and then how much I have used during the course of the year. I should have been marking some of that down as I started the pantry challenge, and that was definitely my intent going into it, but you know, I kind of have kept track of some things and other things not so much. So I still am not 100% sure what I would need to make it through the course of the year. That being said, I know that there are some items that I use a lot of. I use a lot of tomato products. You can use tomato products for so many different things. Chili sauce, tomato sauce, spaghetti sauce, salsa. I use a lot of salsa. That's probably why I planted a lot of peppers, because I know that I am going to use a lot of salsa. So a lot of tomato products. So I know I'm going to need a lot of tomatoes in the garden. I know that green beans are a great vegetable to have during the winter time. They're easy to can and put away, and they're a great side dish to anything that I'm cooking. So those are just a few things that I know I'm going to want to preserve. Last year we started doing some experimenting with fermenting, and I know that I really enjoyed the bread and butter pickles that were fermented in the refrigerator. And those were just a special, special treat. So I know I'm going to want excess cucumbers in order to preserve them in that way as well. So the first thing I really want to do in preparation for restocking my pantry is think about how I need to grow things in the garden and what I'm going to put in the garden so that I will have the produce necessary to preserve what I need to have in my pantry. The second thing that I've been thinking about lately is preserving anything that is in excess. I enjoy listening to books while I'm working on projects around the house, and one of the books that I've been listening to lately is a historical fiction book that is set back in the time period of the Dust Bowl and the Great Depression, and it's really gotten me to look at things a little bit differently. I initially was thinking you should ideally plan everything out for just 1 year's worth of time. But I've recently started to kind of revise my thinking on that, and that we shouldn't necessarily just plan for that 1 year. You want to plan and prepare to have enough food that's going to get you through the year into the next growing season. But we really do want to take advantage of preserving anything that is in excess. A lot of the people who were alive during that time period, during the Great Depression, and people who lived in the area that was affected by the Dust Bowl, a lot of those people, the only reason that they made it as far as they did or were able to thrive as much as they were was because of all of the food that they had set aside previously. So if I'm growing something in the garden and there is excess of that thing, rather than think, well, I have enough to get me through the next year, if there's enough to go ahead and preserve a little bit extra, I need to be putting that aside as well. Because you never know when the next year might not produce as well as your current year. We've had a lot of weather abnormalities lately in many different growing regions. And if you end up with a drought like we had here last summer, or maybe you're having temperature fluctuations where you're having warmer than normal temperatures or cooler than normal temperatures, that's really going to affect how the crops are growing and how much produce you're able to produce. If you are not planned ahead, it could leave you with a big hole in your pantry. So in addition to weather abnormalities, we also can see disease that comes through. Maybe you end up with blight on your tomatoes, or you end up with blossom end rot, and a large percentage of your crop is just ruined. And some of that can be impacted by so many different things. We know fertilizer, soil health, weather. A lot can impact different diseases that might show up on plants. In addition to that, we also have pestilence. So maybe we end up with cucumber beetles. Last year we ended up with some cucumber beetles that we were having a hard time getting rid of. And if we hadn't caught that problem early, we would have lost our entire cucumber crop because they were coming in and attacking. If that happened and you weren't able to get your cucumbers growing, you could potentially lose a whole season of production. And if there wasn't enough set aside already, that's going to leave a large hole in your pantry. So as I've just been thinking through what it takes to kind of look ahead and prepare ahead, if extra produce becomes available, I want to look for different ways that I can utilize that. So maybe I want to start looking for some different recipes that I think would be fun to try if I had some extra of a particular thing, whether that be a new jam recipe, or maybe I want to find a different relish recipe or something new that I could try if I end up with an excess amount of produce in a particular vegetable or fruit. And the third thing that I was thinking about when it comes to restocking your pantry and preparing to restock your pantry is that now is a great time to start gathering supplies. If you are going to be getting into canning for the first time or any kind of food preservation, there is an initial cost involved. And that's not something that you want to put off and invest in July or August when it's time to start canning. So number one, the cost factor, you might want to spread that out over the months preceding canning season. The second thing is, in the last few years, we have had a shortage of canning supplies, and it's been really difficult to even get the canning supplies that were necessary to do the preserving to start with. I had my jars already, fortunately, but for a while we couldn't even find canning jars around the local area. I've started to see those slowly come back into stock, and even though it's not your traditional canning season, if you see some of those, now would be a great time to start picking those up. For myself, I already have the jars, but I know that I'm going to need to buy some of the caps to replace them. I need canning lids that are going to replace the lids that I've already used. And some places, because of the previous shortage, are putting limits on how many you can pick up at a time. So if you don't start early, you might not have the quantity that you need in order to get your canning completed. And again, the cost of those has increased as well. So by starting early, I can spread that cost over the next few months as we kind of gear up for canning season. The other thing is, if you're not going to be purchasing your canning items from a new store, some people can find those items locally, some people might buy those items online. You might want to start looking at estate sales, or we'll be getting into garage sale season before too long. And sometimes people who are maybe moving out of the food preservation season, they might have items available for sale at a reduced rate. And that might be a great way to begin acquiring some of those canning supplies that you will need to do your canning later on in the season. And also, if you are planning to preserve your food in another way, you may also want to stock up on those items as well. So if you're planning to do some dehydrating, you may need to make sure that you have a dehydrator that's in good working order, whether that means purchasing one, or if you already have one, making sure that you don't have any replacement parts or things that you need to replace before you get started with your dehydrating. And then even if you're going to be freezing some of your produce, you may want to start picking up freezer bags. I've heard that there are some different areas where even freezer bags have been in short supply, and we just don't know with our supply chain the way that it has been lately. And it doesn't hurt to be prepared and have some of those things on hand, in addition to spreading that cost out over a few months rather than getting to the time where you need to be preserving and not having what you need because you can't find it or because you don't have the funds at that moment to purchase the supplies that you need. I hope that today's discussion was helpful and beneficial to you. It's just been on my mind a lot as we've been going through this pantry challenge, that now that I've been making a conscious effort to use my canned items, I need to be consciously preparing to restock that pantry, or that portion of my pantry, as we're coming through 2022. And I hope today you were able to get some ideas for some of the preparation that you could be doing to restock your canned items as well. Let me know in the comments down below, is there something else that I forgot on this list when it comes to preparing to restock your canning pantry? Is there something that you have done that has helped you to look ahead and prepare to restock your pantry? If today's video was helpful to you, don't forget to click like and subscribe so that you never miss a future video. Until next time, bye everyone.